Hi, Psychomotivation. What do you say? We talk about paper 2. So, Who Am I? The book by Dr. Reese, right? Required reading for us, and another chapter in the story of you, if you will. So, who am I? It's the 16 basic desires that motivate our actions and define our personalities. So I think it's a pretty good fit for this course, that being psychology of motivation. I want to talk about the background a little bit behind the book. And Reese, as you read, does a good job of describing where he's coming from in developing these 16 basic desires. So the background. Well, we talked about needs at the beginning of the course, and certainly Reese talks about needs in his book. And beginning with William James, when they start talking needs or instincts, if you will, these grand theories of motivation, which were largely unsuccessful, right? With William James, he identifies like saving, construction, curiosity, exhibition, family, hunting, order, play, sex, shame, pain, herd, vengeance. And think about it though. This is really, hey, I'm observing this behavior in people, and because I observe this behavior, then it implies that there is this need, and every time we observe a new behavior or behavioral constellation, we assign a new need to it, and pretty soon we have a cumbersome, kind of unwieldy understanding that is implied by the grand theory of need theory. But from there, McDougall added to the list, so now we've got 17 characteristics. The two groups are in tension. Freud and Adler are examples of distilling the list down to basic and few needs. That is an ever shorter list. James got 37. McDougall, very comfortable with instinct desires. Lengthy lists at that, right? So Murray restated McDougall's list of instincts as psychological needs, but went on to develop a technique for assessing a person's motives. So that is kind of the transition point. Now, Murray's psychogenic needs then. Needs, and notice he's got 6 categories. So needs associated with inanimate objects. And we may see these present in ourselves, right? Acquisition. Are you a collector? I mean, I like to collect music, right? So that's an inanimate object. So we would explain my behavior because I have this acquisition need, or conservancy, that is to take care of. A need to order, put things in order. A need for attention. A need to build, right? But these are associated with inanimate objects. We go on from there. We see needs reflecting ambition, power, right? Accomplishment, prestige. So we might want a need for recognition, a need for achievement. We've seen those have kind of persisted over the test of time. Needs connected with human power, like dominance, deference, right? Autonomy, that is the freedom from someone's power, or possessing the power to be free, if you will. Sadomasochistic needs, aggression and abasement. And we know Eric Fromm would be down with those, because a primary component of Fromm's analysis of why people succumb to authoritarian regimes is the sadomasochistic needs, the need to dominate one but be dominated on the other hand. Needs concerned with affection between people, and these are the relationship needs as we go on to call them. And then needs concerned with social intercourse, like cognizance, being understood, and being able to show off through exhibition. So that's kind of our jumping off point, if you will. Let's take a look at the book, and let's say hello to Dr. Reese. So here's Dr. Reese. What is perhaps most significant about the answer put forth in this book that is based on having actually asked large numbers of people what's most important to them? So I think the process of developing the book, developing this list of needs, is based on people. And literally, right, thousands of people are asked, hey, what is important to you? It's heavily influenced by Maslow's very motivational perspective that as humans, we're creatures of desire who are always wanting something. So the 16 basic desires then, which is probably a manageable list when you get right down to it. I mean, it's a list that's large enough to differentiate, but not to become overwhelming. And the basic desires then are power, independence, curiosity, acceptance, order, saving, honor, idealism, social contact, family, status, vengeance, romance, eating, gotta eat to live, right? Physical exercise, and tranquility. So a couple of definitions then, 16 categories that were the result of their research. These categories are more narrowly defined goals and motives, and they have a common theme. So the basic desire, for example, power, right? What's the evolutionary basis that might call for the inclusion of power as one of the needs? Well, dominant animals push weaker away. So this is just something that we can observe in the world. The associated emotion, well, competence and influence. So through the exhibition of power, and I can, put people in their place, so to speak, it demonstrates my competence or my ability to influence. And the behaviors then might be leadership or achievement. We can see independence. Animals leave the nest, expanding the territory. This is associated with the emotion of freedom. Now, okay, is freedom an emotion? I would say no. But others might disagree with me, and if you're taking psychology of emotion, or you've taken psychology of emotion, or you're going to take psychology of emotion, let me assure you, I will ask repeatedly, you'll get sick of me asking, is that an emotion? Is that an emotion? Is love an emotion? Is freedom an emotion? Is hope an emotion? Right? That's something we explore in the course, but self-reliance then is the behavior. So we go on down the list, right? And we can pick out some others on the list. Honor. Basic desire, right? Avoid being stared at or singled out, the herd mentality perhaps. Loyalty is the associated emotion. Character, morality, principled behavior are the behaviors. And so it goes. Vengeance, aggression, anger, hatred, the associated emotion. Revenge as the motive. And so it goes. We can go down the list. I'll leave you to work through the list, but let us now talk about how the list was constructed. Developed a list of potential human goals. So he asks literally thousands of people, hey, what's important to you? And from that, then we get a list of goals of 400. Now 400 is unwieldy. Thankfully, Dr. Reese went through the work to reduce this, distill it down to a list of 16. How do you do this? Well, the first thing you do is you put out these questionnaires and you ask people, and then you assess, you compile all the data, and then you have coders look at it. You have people, independent coders, that look at it and say, are any of these redundant? Are any of these basically saying the same thing? Are any of these like dictionary synonyms, right? Okay, so we narrow the list down because we collapse some needs onto each other as meaning essentially the same thing. Then he puts in the criteria that they must be psychologically relevant, psychologically significant. Thirst, I need to drink, I get thirsty, is not psychologically relevant, it's a physiological drive. So we can see that those are going to be pulled off the list by Reese's definition. And then they need to be intrinsically valued, something that we value in and of itself, right? And not necessarily the outcomes that it produces. From this, we now are down to 328 items, and we subject them to this fancy statistical technique called factor analysis. And factor analysis is simply we take each of these and we correlate each item to each item. So we end up with a correlational matrix, no shit, of 328 by 328. And this allows us then to prepare to do the factor analysis. The factor analysis says, is there any conceptual framework that groups these needs? So factor analysis is looking for underlying factors that demonstrate a commonality or difference between the individually listed needs. And from that, and what you do is you do it in two steps. You do an exploratory factor analysis to see how many factors are suggested, and then once you're done, you collect a new data set and you analyze that data set, but now you do confirmatory factor analysis, as akin to hypothesis testing statistically, and see if the model that you've created, that is the number of categories, actually provides the best fit to the data. So you allow the data to generate the categories, but then you turn around and you see if the categories fit a new data set, right? It's a fascinating process. I took a class in this in graduate school. One of the hardest classes I ever took was factor analysis, but Super important and super useful. So 16 categories emerged. That's the best fitting model, that 16 factors, categories, have the most explanatory power and demonstrate the highest level of significance in the significance testing of the models. So predictive validity then, now that we have this list of needs, do these needs, are they actually meaningful? That will they predict? So subsequent research then tests the needs on their ability to predict someone's actual life outcomes. Predicts at least to some degree. We hypothesize that this need profile leads to this college major. We test it and find support for it. Membership in a club or an interest group was also supported. Scores on other psychometric instruments, and this is probably the most important test, is anytime you develop a psychometric instrument, then you have to test it against other psychometric instruments. And you kind of locate your psychometric instrument in space. How is it similar to pre-existing instruments, and how does it differentiate yourself? So this is a very rigorous process that Reese went through, and really stands the test of a high level of empirical testing on it. It also predicted to some degree religiosity and athleticism. So from there, we go to this conversation of means and ends. Means are actions. It's a way to get there. It's an action. It's a process, a technique to accomplish an outcome or a goal. Ends are the intrinsically desirable outcomes. They represent the goal. As Reese puts it, when a person swims for the fun of it, swimming is the end. When a swimmer competes in a meet, however, swimming is an intermediate step toward the end goal of winning the competition. So understand why people swim for the fun of it, we need to study the basic desire for exercise. So note, I was talking to my stepsister, my half-sister a while back, and she says she's been swimming a lot at the outdoor pool, and she's in Berkeley, so you can do that, right? She doesn't compete. She's not a competitive swimmer. She doesn't swim to win. She swims because she enjoys swimming as a form of exercise. So to her, swimming is the end. It's intrinsically desirable activity that brings her pleasure. Now note, some people don't swim for pleasure necessarily, but they swim to fulfill their competitive desire to beat others in the pool. So swimming can serve two vastly different motives. It can be a vehicle to competing and winning, or it can be an end in itself. And so I think it's important to differentiate those. Certainly Dr. Reese thought it was important. So basic desire, power, right? This is the desire. But what is the result of power, or the successful exercise of power, is achievement, competence, or leadership, right? Independence may be a basic desire, and boy, when we talked in class, we talked about autonomy last time in our Zoom session, and many of you were really jazzed to be living on your own in your own apartments, right? And that would demonstrate, right, a basic desire for independence, the end goal, freedom, ego integrity. And many of you mentioned being able to make your own choices, do what you want, achieve your own level of cleanliness was an important one, right? Curiosity, basic desire, knowledge, truth. Some of us are curious. We don't come to pre-arranged notions. We're curious and we go investigate with an open mind. Not to assure that this is the outcome, but to just find out what the outcome actually is, right? Acceptance. And this would be self-acceptance or acceptance by others, positive self-image, and a sense of self-worth. Order. Cleanliness, stability, organization. So, basic desire, saving. Honor, idealism, social contact, family. The end goals then, right? Questions about this? A couple more, right? So, status, vengeance, romance, eating, physical exercise, tranquility, end goals, as you can see, the associated end goals, means to the end conversation. Let us set it aside and go to this little... How many of you said, oh my God, they just don't understand me. My parents don't understand me, my partner doesn't understand me, my friends don't understand me. Well, the misunderstanding between differing need holders. And now I'm going to invoke something that my advisor at graduate school, my first advisor, Phil Tetlock, talked about repeatedly, was a Peabody Plot. And a Peabody Plot is the exercise of two different points of view. So, how does it work? Well, let's take the dimension of power, right? The strong desire is someone who is ambitious. If you have a strong desire for power, you might be described as ambitious. A weak desire for power would probably be described as unambitious. But I think what's interesting and what the Peabody Plot illuminates is how do the unambitious view the ambitious, and how do the ambitious view the unambitious? How does the ambitious view themselves, and how do the unambitious view themselves? So what a person thinks of the self, if I have a strong desire, right, for power, I'm ambitious, what do I think of myself? Well, shit, I'm a leader, I'm hardworking, strong, successful-oriented, right, dominant, power achiever, a make things happen kind of person, right? Now, what then do I think of people who are what I would classify as unambitious? Well, I think of them as lazy or weak or unsuccessful. But perspectives deserve to be flipped, do they not? So what does someone who's got a weak desire for power think about themselves? They're people-oriented. They're submissive, they're follower, they're chill, they're laid back, right? They don't have to be the boss of everything. But what do they think of a person who's high in the need for power? Well, they're workaholics, they're driven, they're bossy, they're dominant, they're annoying, they're controlling, they're single-minded. So note, when it's about me, then I take a favorable point of view. And then I take an unfavorable point of view of the opposite. But those who would be considered the opposite then take a favorable view of themselves and an unfavorable view of me. Hence the Peabody Plot. It's an fascinating exercise on perspective taking. And notice that it can be applied to really kind of any dichotomy, that is, any continuum. So in this case, power, but let's take one for honor, just as another example. Okay? So people who demonstrate a strong desire, these are principled people, the strong desire for honor. What do they think of themselves? Well, I'm responsible, moral, loyal, principled. I've got character, I'm conscientious, dutiful. But those people who have a weak desire for honor, they're unprincipled, they're disloyal, they're dishonorable, they're self-serving, they'll say anything to anyone, right? They're uncaring, they lack character. But notice the person who has a low or a weak desire for power, these then are expedient people. They see themselves as practical and willing to capitalize on opportunities that present themselves. They're like everybody else, right? They may be adaptable. They may be the ones that Darwin was talking about in their own minds. But how do they view people then who have the strong desire for honor? How does the expedient people view the principled people? Oh, those self-righteous, preachy, sanctimonious, holier than thou assholes, right? So, and one lesson that can emerge from this, if we're able to engage in a Peabody Plot, and I know that my way and the way I live my life and the way I view the world is the right way, and people who don't are inferior to me, right? But remember, the people I'm calling inferior believe that I'm inferior. So best if we can acknowledge each other's point of view and kind of allow for both points of view to coexist, if at all possible. Okay? So in talking about achieving happiness, happiness value-based versus feel-good. Feel-good happiness is pleasant sensations, sensual feelings, like we pay to get a massage, and oh my god, oh, doesn't that feel good? Or we eat just absolutely delectable, appetizing meal, and oh, wasn't that wonderful? Feel-good happiness, though, the downside is it doesn't really satisfy an inner need for meaning. There is not necessarily any meaning attached to it, and it tends to be extremely short-lived, and the principle of hedonic contingency, that means that we adjust to this happiness very quickly and it doesn't have the same impact. So we often have to keep bumping it up a level, right, to get the same kind of kick from it. Now, value-based happiness is the general feeling of well-being as a result of experiencing meaning. Giving blood may be unpleasant. Sitting down and having to spend the time, in the space, etc., and then getting a needle stuck in your arm, which is not the worst thing in the world, but there's really nothing, when you think about it, that pleasant about the experience of giving blood. Maybe the cookies and the orange juice when you're done, right? But that's feel-good happiness anyway. But what you say is there's meaning to what I'm doing. I'm contributing to the health of other people. I'm an empathetic human being that cares about others enough to give my life source, my blood, so that others can survive. That's a frickin' meaningful activity. And the idea is it creates this value-based happiness that has a longer duration and has a deeper impact and a deeper effect, right? So it's more enduring. Now, with all this being said, your mission, right, for this paper, please complete Dr. Reese's 16 Basic Desire Questionnaire in your book, Who Am I? So you complete the questionnaire. Then from the list of questions below, answer 4, so it's a 20-point assignment, 5 points per question. I warn you, I'm grading this. And, there's 160 of us in this class. Yeah, no shit. 160. Who would ever thought that was possible when I first started teaching this class? But it's up to 160 now, regularly. I'm going to read each of your papers. So, and I'm going to look, and I'm going to grade these, from 0 to 5 on each of the 5. So, I'm sure you're going to do well, right? So, from the list of questions below, answer 4 questions, 5 points each. Each answer will require a well thought out and well constructed paragraph, maybe a half page, right? So the paper should not exceed 2 to 3 pages. So if it was 4 times a half page is 2, you want to go a little over, go to 3. Please don't go beyond 3. Yes, this is 12-point font, double spaced. Thank you very much, just in case you needed to know. All right. I will grade these paragraphs on their clarity, their depth, and demonstrated comprehensive treatment of the question. We're going to go back to Bloom's taxonomy. I'm looking at your ability to apply this information to the questions, right? So it's not just knowledge or understanding. I'm looking for application. Yeah, I'm going to be tough on you guys, right? So select any of the 4 discussion points below. Respond with no more than that paragraph for each. Label each paragraph with the discussion point number. Do not make me guess. If you make me guess, what's going to happen if I'm reading it and I say, oh my God, what is this person talking about? Which question are they answering? That's not going to go well for the grading of your paper. So, ace in the hole, put the question number that you're answering. And if you can arrange them in order, that's so much the better, right? So if you do 2, 7, 3, and 6, put them in order. 2, 3, 6, 7 there. Pretty good, huh? All right. Reflect on the whys of your scores. This is question number 1. Extreme scores are probably more illuminating. Interesting. Discuss 2. Okay? Or, number 2, assess agreement accuracy with your own self-perception as compared to the measure. Do you believe that the measure captures you well, or does it not? And you don't just say, I don't think it captures me well. Then you got to explain why, and you have to present a cogent argument. That's what I'm looking for, right? A well-supported and well-thought-out argument. If you do this 2 hours before it's due, I don't think you're going to achieve your highest level of quality. What do you think? All right? So as soon as you see this lecture, which I'm going to be dropping on you like Saturday or Sunday, the 20th or the 21st of February, I would think about reading the book at that point in time, within that week, right? So I would have this book read by the end of March. The paper's due in April 1st or so. Not quite, I think April 4th. But number 3, choose one desire that's important, another that's unimportant. Explain why you view each as important and unimportant. What is a pro and con to each of those that you've discussed? Provide examples for clarity. Okay. Question number 4, and remember, it's your choice of questions. Debate, discuss, evaluate question construction. Do you believe any questions are flawed? So this is where you have an opportunity to look at Reese's work and comment on his work rather than your scores, right, if you want to take that approach. And for those of you who are research-minded, this question might appeal to you, right? 5, any profound items, qualities, desires missing? If so, what's missing? Reese has done painstaking work to demonstrate 16 desires. Do you think he missed one? If so, what is it and why? And how is it not represented in the others? That's a tough question. I'd be careful if you want to take on this question. You're going to have to be really uber persuasive about it. Remember, I'm a fan of Reese and his methodology. So if you want to take question 5, you're going to have to be on your game. That's not to say don't do it. You know I'm going to read it with an open mind, right? But you're going to have all your ducks in a row to make that one sing, right? Or quack, if you will. That was horrible. If you did your 16 desire assessment with a partner, and it gives you an option, explains that in the book, I want to know your observations, your reactions. How did it work out? Did you learn anything valuable? Would it potentially help your relationship in the future? And explain, right? And I think this is a great tool, especially when we're younger and we're partnering and maybe not necessarily engaged yet or just engaged. Man, if both people take this, what if family is like a super strong need for your partner and family is completely unimportant to you? I want you to imagine then what the future of your relationship looks like with such a difference on such an important need. Is this an inherent incompatibility that might just spell that this relationship is not made in heaven and may need to be reconsidered? I know, I hate saying that, but better to know, right? Take it from me. Yes, I'm on my 3rd marriage, so... Oh, isn't that horrible? Exploring the potential observed dichotomies. Make a Peabody plot of one of your own desires. We'll discuss the example as I did earlier in this lecture, right? I said it says in class, but and you can ask me questions about this, obviously in our class sessions. So if you want to do the Peabody plot thing, have a ball. Go ahead and do one out as one question. It's an interesting exercise, and that's kind of fun, right? So. Actually, we use that quite a bit because when we were studying punishment in Tetlock's labs, there's people who are really punitive and want to punish strongly for just about anything, right? And there's other people who are amazingly forgiving. So what do you think? What would a totally forgiving person say about a punitive person? And what would a punitive person say about a forgiving person? And then, of course, what would the forgiving person say about themselves, and what would the punitive person say about themselves? So we did the legitimate Peabody plot to inform a lot of our research, actually. Tetlock was an amazing guy, brilliant guy, scary brilliant. I mean, Tetlock's got like an IQ of 180. He's just like, amazingly brilliant. And my first couple months with Tetlock, it's like I had to go to a thesaurus after every time I met with him. I would sit there and take notes as we were meeting, and I'm writing down all these words that I don't understand. And it's like, dude, I just took the GRE and did really well. That 5,000 word list I got under my belt, and this guy's finding another 1,000 words that weren't on the 5,000 word list. And he loved Latin terms, so that was really, oh my God. So anyway, number 8, last one, right? Apply a given desire to an issue of actual motivation with life example. In essence, moving forward on your journey of self-knowledge improvement with what you've learned in a practical manner. It might help to frame this answer in terms of the desires, the relationship to autonomy, competence, or relatedness, right? And how this desire connects with those. But in a forward, proactive manner, looking at, hey, this is what I've learned about myself, and this is what it means for, and what I can do with or about, right? So you can project yourself into the future with this newfound knowledge, right? But feel free to take it. It's got to be well crafted. Okay. So there you go. You got 4 questions to answer. Your choice. Bear in mind that I'm going to score each question separately and then total it together. But if the paper falls short in grammar, spelling, construction, any of those, I reserve the right to deduct a point or two. And again, just make sure that you label each question, so this is question 1, question 2, question 3 that I'm answering, question 8, if you do them in order, so much the better. You don't have to answer them in order, but when you present them, why not present them in numerical order, right? Just to make it easier to grade for me. And yeah, as you got the idea, I'm grading it. Our course assistant grades the first paper, I grade the second paper in this regard. What else? Again, it's the story of you. So pick the questions that resonate, enjoy it, take it with a partner if you will, if that's the way you want to go. Prepare maybe to be surprised. It can be pretty critical and pretty important to understand that if your strongest need is a need for family and your partner that's not on their need profile whatsoever, you have to say, what does that imply maybe for the future of a relationship, or does the relationship in fact have a future? A lot of issues to get into, but again, it's about you, and it's about understanding you and making your life choices more meaningful to you. Annika, is that helpful? Stop that right now. Boy, it's getting towards feeding time for the cats, and they're starting to get really kind of crappy. They kind of do that at this point in time. Like, are you going to feed us? You're not feeding us yet, so maybe I'll screw with your stuff until you give up and feed us, right? That's the story. And these guys are so we got Montana, Sancho, and Skinny. And Sancho. Who's Sancho? What literary character with the name Sancho? From what book? Yeah, Sancho is named for Sancho Panza, who was Don Quixote's right-hand man in the book Don Quixote. And think about that. I named one of my cats after Sancho because Don Quixote, I just love that book. And think about that. Then if Don Quixote, and if you've read Don Quixote, then you say, well, why would this be one of his favorite books? But I think more interestingly, what might it say if I hold Don Quixote, the book, in such high in such high esteem? Then what might that imply about my strongest desires as represented in the 16 basic desires? There's something to think about. So regardless, I hope you guys enjoy the assignment. I hope you enjoy the book, and I hope you enjoy the self-exploration. So have a great day.